You.
Call your panel, please.
The only one I had on was Darrell Carrington, but anybody who supports the bill, I'm welcome to join. I'll be very brief.
I believe there's a Rusty Carr. All right,
Good enough.
same thing, but all right, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Mr. Vice Chair, members of the committee. For the record, Delegate Robin Grammer to present House Bill 408. House Bill 408 implements an industry-to-consumer cannabis legalization awareness program and tax credit. As violent crime has increased in eastern Baltimore County, one of the main benefits of legalization to District 6 is the reduction of crime that comes with legalized markets. I have had the fortune to serve on the legalization task force of both Speaker Bush and Speaker Jones, and both of these groups have discussed the reduction in crime that coincides with the move of consumers from the illicit market to the legal market. Both groups have also noted how public awareness campaigns can help move market participants toward the legal market. Both groups have also discussed the cost of public awareness campaigns that can quickly escalate to the tens of millions of dollars over a period of a few years. House Bill 408 aims to achieve enhanced public awareness of the benefits of reduction in crime that are achieved when consumers move to legal markets, and it aims to reduce cost to taxpayers by engaging industry partners, the groups that interface directly with market participants. This bill requires the Alcohol and Tobacco Commission to implement the program, provide materials that may be used by partners, and allows for a very small tax credit for those who meet the requirements. The only change I would suggest considering, if you're interested in the bill, is to include those who qualify patients for medical in this bill, which is not in there currently. And with this bill, we can help adopt legal markets, improve public safety, and reduce cost to taxpayers. With that, thanks for the opportunity to present House Bill 408. I'd be happy to take questions and ask for a favorable.
All right, good delegate. Seeing no questions, thank you very much
Thank you so
for your
much.
presentation. Again, Mr. Rusty Carr, please come step forward, sir.
Thank you, Chairman Wilson, committee members. My name is Rusty Carr. I'm a resident of Mount Airy and a current medical cannabis patient. Let's face it, we need a campaign to tell the public what's going on, and it should have started the day after Question 4 results got certified. We don't know what's going on. Everything's going to wait until July 1st. Thank you, Delegate Kramer, wherever you went, for this bill, because we need to do something before July 1st. And I give you credit for coming up with a creative way of getting that done. So I'm here to help that. I'm a little bit confused on how this is going to work in terms of a flyer in exchange for a 0.25% credit. And I've got some stuff in my written testimony about that. But it shouldn't be just industry to consumer. It needs to be everybody. It needs to be a whole of government. It needs to be a whole of community. And we need to go to everybody, all 6 million residents of Maryland. Because even if you don't consume cannabis, you need to know what the endocannabinoid system is. Parents need to teach their kids what the red leaf THC symbol means. That's new. We still got some of the old green symbols out there. Somebody, a couple years ago, asked a question, what are we going to tell our kids? This is now going to become over-the-counter medication. Kids need to be told something about it. Schools need to teach about the endocannabinoid system. There's a lot of stuff that needs to go on. And I'm glad somebody's trying to make that happen instead of waiting until July 1st and see how it goes. If you have any questions, thanks very much.
I believe so, that there are multiple individuals signed up that if you'd like to bring them all at the same time. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. House Bill 922 I'm Delegate Jason Buckle. This is a bill that I think no one should really have any opposition to. The state of Maryland has obviously made a decision, both legislatively and through voter referendum, that cannabis is a legal industry in our state and that we are treating it similarly to other similarly situated industries. And what the intent of the bill and the purpose of the bill is to make very, very clear that we have a wide variety of economic development programs, tax credit programs, other types of programs that exist that are designed to help the growth of businesses to both come to Maryland, grow in Maryland, stay in Maryland. And some of these programs do not have any explicit mention of cannabis businesses, but because of the fact that we all understand that cannabis is still technically federally illegal, not technically, actually federally illegal, and because up until very recent times it has been an illegal industry in our state, there is evidence to suggest that formally or informally, cannabis companies are excluded from participating in the economic development and tax credit incentive programs of the state. Things like the More Jobs for Marylanders program, the Job Creation Tax Credit, the One Maryland Tax Credit program, and others. So what the bill does very simply is it makes a clear policy statement for the Department of Commerce and other entities that administer this program so that they understand it is the intent and the will of the General Assembly that cannabis-related companies, growers, dispensaries, other eligible businesses in this space are just as eligible for these tax credit and economic incentive programs as any other company. And it does this hopefully in a prophylactic way so that in the future there will not be any situations where someone who's administering one of these programs fits cannabis in with some of what we used to call the sin industries, which are barred specifically in some of the economic development statutes from getting tax credits. You can't get tax credits, for example, for adult entertainment businesses or things of that nature. And we want to make sure that cannabis is viewed the way the legislature in the state is viewing it, as a viable, multi-tiered industry that is a job producer. I have with me today several individuals from Grow West, which is an integrated grower and a dispensary located in Western Maryland. I think it's one of the more successful growers in the state. And I can tell you that while there was initially some reluctance, as you have in many communities, about bringing a large cannabis grower to Allegheny County, over the last several years, they have been a wonderful corporate partner for our community. They have created quite a few jobs and quite an additional amount of tax base, and to the best of my knowledge, have had absolutely zero negative impacts whatsoever in our community. They've been wonderful corporate partners and members of the community, and I know they're here today to express some of their thoughts and experiences of trying to help grow the business through these economic development programs and having difficulties doing so. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, if you don't mind, if I can go. My name is Brandon Butler. I am with Pinnacle Strategies and we're representing Grow West MD. With me today is Susan Valois, the president of Grow West. What this bill means to Grow West and to other cannabis industry partners is that it opens the door for a number of the economic development entities, such as Delegate Buckle mentioned, One Maryland tax credits, job creation tax credits, more jobs for Marylanders. Grow West has been able to do something that is rather extraordinary for a Western Maryland town. They have taken over the old Kelly Springfield tire facility that used to employ 600 of our individuals in the community. They have since then, they've now grown over the last few years to now 150 employees. They're one of the leaders in the industry for job creation, and not only just jobs but careers, and not only careers but also providing family sustaining wages. And so when you talk about economic development in Western Maryland and other communities, you have to talk about the medical cannabis industry. But unfortunately, some of the tax credits, as Delegate Buckle mentioned, they've had the door shut in their face. They haven't been able to take advantage of those things. If we were talking about a manufacturer, those or any other industry, those would have been game on for those tax credits. But unfortunately, these same things don't apply to this industry. We did provide some testimony, including an article from the Cumberland Times-News, where a number of the employees, whenever they hit the 100 employee mark, they were able to tell you exactly what a job at Grow West means to them. And so for that, we ask for a favorable consideration.
Thank you, Brandon. Thank you. Sure. Chairman Wilson and members of the committee. My name is Susan Valois. I'm a lifelong Maryland resident and president of our family-owned Maryland company, Grow West. We were aware of the opportunity it could bring to residents of the region deeply affected by the retreat of industry. We chose to build our cultivation center in Cumberland. Grow West now occupies the former Kelly Springfield tire manufacturing complex, as Brandon mentioned, which was sitting idle for almost three decades. Bringing this property back to life provided not only an economic boost to the region, but also a strong psychological one. From the beginning, Grow West invested in the community. Our construction projects, which transformed the Kelly buildings into a gleaming modern cultivation center, employed local contractors and tradespeople for over 24 months. So we've gone in 2018 from 18 employees to now 150 strong and participating. They're all participating in the economy. Grow West provides good jobs, sustaining wages, health benefits, 401ks. That's allowed our employees to stay in their towns. They purchase homes and cars, support local business and economic development, and they're building a strong community. As a major employer in Allegheny County, Grow West is currently excluded from these tax credits, and they're important and they're available to other businesses. We took the buildings empty for decades and put them back on the county's tax rolls. So our hope today is to be recognized as a legitimate tax-paying Maryland business. Thank you very much for your time.
Seeing no questions, okay, seeing no questions, thank you guys very much.
Thank you very much.
Moving on to the next bill, Delegate Mangione. Do you have a panel, sir?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chair. They can come out. Should be two of them. Thank you.
I don't know who's in your panel.
Yes, should be two people, I think. Actually,
That's all right. They can announce themselves when they
Thank you.
begin speaking.
Good afternoon, Chairman Wilson and the honorable members of the committee. I want to be very brief before yielding my time to my experts here who are far more equipped to answer some of your questions and explain this topic than I am. But I'll just get right to the point. Of course, we know the legalization of marijuana and all the rules and regulations that follow is such an important issue, especially this session here. So when Mr. Marchione, a constituent, reached out to me about a severe issue with a member of his family, of course, as the district representative, I wanted to at least, I thought this was elevated to the point that we could have a serious discussion in the committee. So it's two parts. Number one, that Cannabis Oversight Agency shall establish a monitoring and prevention procedure to ensure that individuals who have been diagnosed with a cannabis-induced psychosis cannot purchase cannabis or cannabis products through the state's medical cannabis program or adult use cannabis program. And number two is that the Cannabis Oversight Agency shall prohibit cannabis or cannabis products sold through the state's adult use cannabis program from containing a Delta-9 THC concentration greater than 15%. Like I said, I'll be brief, and I will now yield my time, and we can start, I guess, to my left here with Mr. Marchione. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, my name is Mark Marchione, and I'm the one that contacted Delegate Mangione to introduce this bill. I served in the U.S. Navy and was an international commercial airline pilot until I retired just last year. I have a son who has cannabis-induced schizophrenia. He will never, ever get better. We have no family history of schizophrenia. It was caused by frequently smoking high THC cannabis at a young age while his brain was still developing. He was diagnosed by a Maryland state psychiatrist who told me, most people don't know this, but marijuana can cause schizophrenia. Many other psychiatrists told me the same thing. I didn't know. I thought it was just weed. I know now. You know now. While the voters have decided to legalize adult use marijuana, I'm sure most of them didn't know that what we have today is not the marijuana from the 1970s that just had 1-2% THC in it. We now have marijuana that has been bred to have 15% THC, and we have cannabis products with over 90% THC. Using it prunes synapses in the brain as the brain is developing if you're under 25 years old. And it causes more than psychosis. There is depression, there are suicides, there is violence. I could tell you so many violent stories, your head would spin. The cannabis industry offers snake oil claims and cure-alls. It's healthy, organic, safe. They said the same thing about cigarettes 70 years ago. Cigarettes might kill you when you're 50 years old, like I had a friend of mine die of cancer, but they don't cause you to try to jump off the roof of a 6-story building and send you to a state psychiatric hospital for a year when you're 24 years old. Allowing high THC products that are 90% sure or pure, like shatter or cannabis oils, would be disastrous. High potency THC is a drug. If we don't properly regulate cannabis, we will have the same problems as Colorado, California, or Washington State. Also, preventing those who have already been diagnosed with cannabis-induced psychosis from buying cannabis is only common sense. A person has a chance to recover after one incident of psychosis. If it happens again, it could be permanent. You all have sons and daughters, grandchildren, nieces and nephews. Think of them. That's it.
Yes, I'm Christine Miller. 3 years ago, I sat in on a meeting in Senator West's office with William Tilburg, the director of the Maryland Medical Cannabis Commission, and a mom who is pleading for help to get her adult son's medical cannabis card taken away. He had developed cannabis-induced psychosis, requiring hospitalization. He resumed using after discharge, continued to have psychotic episodes, and it became impossible for him to function as a music teacher. Mr. Tilburg informed her that he didn't think there was a mechanism to block her son's purchases, but he would try to help her and let her know. She never heard back. This bill would provide the mechanism needed then and now. For those who don't believe cannabis is causal for psychosis, the evidence is overwhelming when the Bradford Hill analysis of causation is applied. And unlike impairment by alcohol, predictable based on body weight and gender, for cannabis you can't predict in advance who's going to be safe. These and other points that follow are all backed up by science in my written testimony. Individuals who develop this disorder are much more likely to recover if they stop using, but if they don't after the first psychotic break, as Mark mentioned, the chances become 50-50 for eventually developing permanent psychosis. Is now the case for that mom's son. Tragic and expensive for families and society. Those who continue to use are not only a danger to themselves, but can also be a danger to others. Why set the concentration cap at 15%? Well, it's estimated to be the average concentration of the cannabis sold on the street, the products most voters were likely thinking of, as there was no mention of potent concentrates in the ballot. 15% is not always safe, but it is much safer than concentrates in the short term. From other states, we know it's better to have these restrictions in place from the start. You may hear these provisions will cause users to turn to the black market, but if we allow them to dictate what's okay, we're doomed. They sell to kids. You may hear that identifying cannabis-induced psychosis patients will violate privacy laws, but HHS, which oversees HIPAA, states communication between medical and other entities is allowed if it's in the best interest of the affected individual. There's precedence for this in Maryland's PDMP program and a mechanism that would be easy to apply. Thank you. Kevin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Kevin Becker. I'm a retired research scientist with a PhD in molecular biology and genetics from Johns Hopkins School of Medicine. I spent 10 years at Hopkins, 30 years at the National Institute of Health, where I ran a molecular lab on many different topics, and including drug abuse with collaborators at the National Institute on Drug Abuse, which is in Baltimore. The science is clear. Today's super strong marijuana is doing harm to the citizens of Maryland. The general public thinks that it's all peace, love, and Woodstock, but it's not. Today's commercial weed, as you heard, is 10 times stronger than in the 1969. It's typically 20 to 30% THC with concentrates up to 80 to 90%. You may hear from the cannabis industry that, we need more research. We just don't know enough about it. But there are over 40,000 peer-reviewed research articles in the medical literature about the harm that marijuana can do. It's well known. It's been known for a long time. And marijuana has been associated with, as you've heard, with cannabis use disorder, psychosis, schizophrenia, increased anxiety, increased depression leading to suicide, fatal car crashes, problems with pregnancy, cyclical vomiting, increased heart attacks, poor education and job outcomes. It's not a pretty picture. Recently, new types of studies, meta-analysis is coming back from the data from the previous legalization studies, and there's a 1,300 increase in unintentional toxic ingestion by children under age of 6, 23% increase in marijuana-associated emergency ward visits, 23% increase in suicide attempts between the ages of 12 and 17, and a 10% increase in fatal car crashes. Of course, this doesn't happen to everybody, but if it happens to you or your kid, it's a tragedy. We in Maryland need to learn from the experience of the prior states, and that's why we need the 15% cap and strong health warnings on marijuana products. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. I believe you have one more favorable, Vince McAvoy.
Thank you so much, committee. I appreciate it. Hope I'm coming in loud and clear. This bill is a common sense and very small, just a pittance that can be offered by the state with respect to the care of children and with respect to the care of those who have otherwise been medically damaged through the use of cannabis products. There will be a flood, there will be an onslaught in the state because starting with Jazz Lewis's HB 0032 and subsequent bills, the state and the judiciary and others have been presented with information that makes it crystal clear that not just nationally, but internationally, we have had expert after expert talk about these psychoses. You're going to have other problems. You're going to have regional problems. This is just a small part to say that those who have been damaged should be prevented in a sort of parens patriae effort of the state to look after its own, because you all are ushering this in. In other words, you heard delegates recently, very recently, say they want to know part of this legalization issue. Why? Because it has not been looked at. It has not been thoroughly vetted, except from the mechanics of marketizing. This is a commerce bill. This has nothing to do with safety, this 556. Delegate Mangioni's bill will have some measure of care that the state can show for people suffering through psychosis. And again, you will see, it will be a benchmark. It will be a template and model for other bills that you have not yet really viewed as being needed. When localities say, we're having this problem, this problem, and this problem. Psychosis ought to be the start. It is the issue that can not just affect that person, affected through cannabis addiction, but those around it, including the family. Thank you for your time. I'll avail for questions.
Thank you very much, sir. Seeing no questions from the members, go ahead and dismiss this panel.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
We have one unfavorable, Karen O'Keefe.
Good afternoon. My name is Karen O'Keefe. I am the Director of State Policies at the Marijuana Policy Project. Your committee has been diligently working to transition cannabis sales to the legal market. A regulated, labeled, and lab-tested cannabis leads to safer outcomes for communities and consumers. This bill would destroy that work by driving cannabis sales underground. The vast majority of cannabis flower that is sold in legal stores, all vape cartridges, and all concentrates exceed 15% THC. Prohibiting products with that much THC or more would set legal cannabis sales up for failure. We support scientifically accurate consumer education and warnings about possible risks, including any specific to higher potency products. Prohibition, however, has not worked for 80 years and will not work for over 15% THC cannabis. We are also very concerned about the other aspect of the bill, which would create a shocking intrusion in Marylanders' medical privacy and deter people who have bad reactions with cannabis from overconsumption from seeking medical help and being honest with their providers. As addiction psychiatrist Brian Adenoff, who leads Doctors for Cannabis Regulations, said in his written testimony, sharing personal diagnostic information of psychiatric diagnosis with cannabis dispensaries without patient consent would appear to be an unconscionable and likely illegal betrayal of patient confidentiality. He also notes the vast majority of research on cannabis-induced psychotic disorder has been conducted on individuals obtaining cannabis from the illicit markets. It is therefore clear that individuals with psychiatric disorders, whether related to cannabis use or not, can access cannabis whether or not it is legally available. The proposed bill, therefore, will be unlikely to decrease cannabis in this targeted population. Also of note, a recent study from the American Medical Association found no statistically significant increase in psychosis-related diagnosis in states that legalize cannabis compared to prohibition states. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, ma'am. I guess I do have a question. I understand the difficulties in the bill, but I believe that the good delegate he was presenting this bill as basically what else can we do to prevent this cannabis-induced psychosis, which is very real. Just saying this bill isn't worthy doesn't really help our situation. A lot of times when bills are brought to our attention, it's to identify a problem, and therefore it still puts that problem in our laps. Are you saying that there's nothing we can do about this problem?
Me?
Yes, ma'am.
My suggestion would be education and at the point of consumption. For example, you could have a warning label that comes with cannabis, much as you have with products that you purchase, like a prescription that tells you about the risks. You could educate medical professionals so that patients can have honest conversations with their medical professionals and they can warn them against it if they have a propensity, family history of psychosis or a personal history of psychosis, so they can have an honest conversation. Basically education, both with medical professionals and with consumers themselves rather than prohibition.
Okay. Thank you very much, ma'am.
Thank you.
Seeing two questions. Go ahead, Delegate Pippi.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This question's for Mrs. O'Keefe. Ms. O'Keefe, would you be opposed to having a warning label that says that this product could result in cannabis-induced psychosis on the product? Would you be comfortable with that?
My suggestion would be to say that there can be scientifically accurate warnings about possible adverse events, and then it can be modified as the science develops, because this is an area where there's a lot of correlation, but it hasn't been shown to be causal. And if it's written in a way that can be revised, then we can make sure we're not telling people things that are inaccurate, which decreases faith in warnings.
So do you believe that it doesn't cause cannabis-induced psychosis? That sounds like what your answer was.
So I think it's looking at what they say on the National Institute of Drug Abuse's website. They say several studies have linked cannabis to the increased risk, ... but whether and to what extent it actually causes these conditions is not easy to determine. So, I'm not a scientist, but the scientists that evaluated the data say it's not clear that it's causal. So I would suggest, and as I said, there's not like a population-wide increase in psychosis, which you would expect as people are using cannabis at higher rates after legalization. So I think it hasn't been definitively proven, as the website from NIDA says. The strongest evidence to date is about the link for those with psychiatric disorders with a pre-existing vulnerability. So it could be that people who are already predisposed might have more adverse effects sooner, but it's really not definitive according to NIDA.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
And just real quick, how would you warn somebody like me or who's never had marijuana or smoked or whatever? We're starting with someone who's a new industry. I know if I look at a pack of cigarettes, it says smoking causes cancer. That's a pretty stark warning and mission accomplished from my perspective. But the point is, aren't we in that same regulatory sphere? And you seem to be kind of demurring on the basic question that I think was being posted here.
So my suggestion would be that instead of me writing the warning, that you have a scientific group or, saying what would be appropriate wording. Scientists decide what is an accurate way to concisely word this based on the most recent data. And it could be that there's a warning specific to high potency products. One warning that is, part of consumer responsibly campaigns is start low and go slow, because a lot of the very adverse acute effects that people have are because they overconsume too much cannabis. And then you can have acute psychosis-like symptoms with paranoia and other problems. So it's really important that novice users know, start slow, start with a low dosage, and use more at a very slow pace. So that's one warning that would be appropriate to include, along with anything else that scientists think is scientifically accurate to be revised periodically as more science develops.
How is slow when it comes to eating gummies?
So basically, maybe you start with, if you haven't used it before, a 2.5 milligram dose and don't have any more for at least an hour until it's had time to take effect. Ideally, none that day, and then you can wait and see how that affects you in the next day, maybe
1 hour.
5.
All right. So, the bill kind of is instructive because I think it speaks to some of the concerns that we should be talking about here, and that's why I was speaking up on it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ma'am, perhaps I missed what you were saying, but how do you tell a teenager who is just experimenting to go slow?
So you tell a teenager not to use cannabis in the first place. Of course, legalization.
Yeah, but let's
is
be
only for
real.
adults.
Let's just be real, though.
So for harm reduction, to the extent the teenager is probably not listening to you in the first place if they're using cannabis. But I think everybody should be warned that higher dosages are more likely to have negative effects, and higher potency is more likely to have negative effects. So to have warnings about those things that you might have very negative, especially acute consequences with high potency cannabis, and of the risks that are specific to younger developing minds. Just honest education of the latest science is important to share with young people. No one wants to have a miserable experience, so.
Okay, thanks.
Well, I just say, I don't think that we're asking for the old Reefer Madness movie to come back, okay? I think that they're just concerned with a very genuine and honest problem here. And to say because the science isn't in, let's just wait and see, it's kind of terrifying to think of it that way because we do know the psychosis is real. And again, we're talking correlations, and I guess in 15 to 20 years, maybe we could have that exact science, but there's a lot of damage that'll be done between now and then. So I guess my concern is the labeling that you were discussing of, the very soft, hey, this may not be the best thing for you kind of labeling. I don't know if that's going to solve the problem. And I think that, again, the good delegate I understand that a lot of the bills we're not going to be able to do, but the problem is still here, and he's laid it in our laps, and I feel like we're obligated somehow, some way to address it. We can't pretend that let's wait till the science comes in. That's not what you're saying, right? You're not saying let's wait till the science comes in, right?
No, I'm just saying make sure it's scientifically accurate and can be revised.
So you don't think it's accurate to say that marijuana can cause psychosis?
Causes, as I said, that NIDA says it's hard to determine if it causes, but you could say linked to.
I should ask the question another way. What would be the harm if we have a correlation, and we do this quite frequently? What's the harm with warning because of the correlation itself?
So I live in California where we have these warnings that things cause cancer and everything, and people just start to not believe them anymore because it's on coffee, it's on French fries, it's on everything. So the concern is if you overstate something, then people don't trust the people giving them warnings anymore. But my suggestion is just having a scientific panel that evaluates the warnings to make sure that they're up to the latest science. And it could be that it says, cannabis use, especially high potency, can be linked to psychosis and have that warning. And it doesn't necessarily just have to be a label. You could also mandate, for example, that there's flyers up posted at retailers of various risks related to cannabis. So, if a scientific panel agrees that high potency cannabis could cause psychosis, you could have a flyer that has to be displayed at retailers to let people know too.
Thank you very much. One more question, Delegate Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a quick question, just to encapsulate this thing. So the medical community, they go off of the DSM-5, correct? And from the DSM-5 is cannabis-induced psychosis in the DSM-5.
So I am not a psychiatrist, but Dr. Brian Adenoff is. And in his testimony, his written testimony, he said, DSM-5 does not include a diagnosis of cannabis-induced psychosis. It does include a diagnosis of cannabis-induced psychotic disorder, which requires a disturbance causing clinically significant distress or impairment, not better explained by a psychiatric disorder that is not cannabis-related, which he said is a very tricky and problematic diagnosis to make.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. I believe that concludes the questions as well as this hearing, ma'am. Thank you very much. I believe we have, the reason that we're all staying late today was we have David Frazier-Hidalgo. He didn't. David, I know you said you wanted to do House Bill 1067 first, but we're not going to do that. No, you're fine. Please start with House Bill 1067 and call a panel if you have it.
Yeah, there's a few people that want to come up that have some products they want to.
What? Thank you. Please. Oh, shit. He's not.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chair, Mr. Vice Chair. Members on a Friday afternoon for being here for this. I have two bills here today. I'm going to go with 1067 first, and the reason I'm going to go with 1067 first is because it's industrial hemp. So just as a little bit of a background, and I don't know if the chair and I were on ENT at the time, but the first bill that came in was, I think, the 2014 Federal Farm Bill, and that started opening up the idea of industrial hemp. So we started passing bills. The problem, for historical purposes, because this is the first time this subject matter, directly industrial hemp, is in this committee, it's always been an ENT, the problem is that the Farm Bill would take tiny little steps, but not really make it clear what industrial hemp was, or how to grow it, how to sell it, how to test it. So we kept making little incremental changes. And over the years, many of you on this committee have seen hemp go across the board in the House and voted for it time after time after time. And that's because industrial hemp, by way of sails, ropes, clothes, hempcrete, all of that is in a separate category. It is non-consumable. It's industrial. It's like insulation. There's a lot of that here. There's floorboards, all kinds of really cool stuff when it comes to hemp. So both of these bills are a bit of moving target because we've had now the cannabis bill, the big bill that's been eaten up a lot of time since the beginning of session, since actually well before the beginning of the session. And so there's been a lot of confusion. So with the two bills, I just really wanted to separate the consumable part with just the industrial stuff that you don't eat or drink or smell or anything. So with that said, there's even moving parts on this bill. So I'll start out with a little bit about what the bill was originally intended to do, and then I'll kind of close with some new information that may change direction. So 1067 will encourage individuals to explore different uses for hemp as a commodity. This will allow hemp farmers to develop and sell various forms of their agricultural product. HB 1067 as amended, there's going to be multiple amendments, so we'll only regulate non-consumable hemp products. Hemp is an incredibly diverse product that can be used for a variety of purposes. For those that don't know, previous to 2014, hemp was mainly grown and produced in Canada and in China and I think Germany, and it's a multi-billion-dollar industry, and since then it's just exploded. 1067 creates 3 hemp licenses to be managed by the Department of Agriculture, a producer's license, a research license, and an industrial license. I can go into detail if you want me to. And HB 1067 takes a common sense approach to increasing the availability and adaptability of hemp while also protecting farmers farmers who have been working diligently in the state over the last almost 10 years now. So with what we're doing with cannabis in general, the latest thought, because again, I beg the indulgence of the committee because this is a moving target, to just simply say, to make it very easy, is that if you are a hemp farmer and you are growing hemp, what I would suggest that the committee consider is grow your hemp, grow as much hemp as you want, and then test it. And if it tests below 0.3, you're done. So you get an agricultural grower's license from the Department of Ag, you grow your hemp as long as it's below 0.3, which is what we've been discussing in the cannabis bill, then you can do whatever you want with it because it's non-intoxicating, it's non-psychotropic, it doesn't mean anything, it doesn't do anything. What it means is this. It means wood floors. What it means is insulation for your home. What it means is all kinds of cool stuff. What it means is shirts and jackets and all kinds of amazing things. That's what it means. That all comes not from the flower, not from the seed. It just comes from the stalk, the part that looks like the little weed coming out of the ground. That's what all this comes from. It's a multi-billion-dollar industry. And I've been fighting for 9 years now to make it a multi-billion-dollar industry here in the state of Maryland. Again, it has nothing to do with getting high. I can't stress that enough. And unfortunately, what's happened is it's kind of gotten thrown into that bucket and been made, and the waters have been made very muddy. So with that said, that's what the intent of what this bill would do. And that's that piece. The edible one, that's a whole other bill we'll talk about next, but I wanted to really create a delineated line between one and the other so that the committee can kind of understand it. And if it's all right with you, Mr. Chair, can I just pass out a couple of these things for people to look at?
It's not show and tell. I think everybody understands this, brother. I appreciate you, but no. Thank you.
I know it's not ENT. On ENT, we used to do it all the time.
I know, but you fled ENT like the rest of us.
Thank you.
So,
Thank you. I know.
But I wanted to say,
right.
I guess my question with your bill, sir, and the intent is we're not saying if your hemp is over 0.3 that you can't make rope out of it.
Right.
So I don't understand what the delineation would have to be. I don't mind, and I don't think anybody sitting here is worried about you making shoes or insulation with 0.04 and 0.05 levels of hemp.
Right.
I think they're more worried about the consumables that you're creating for the purpose of intoxication, which why we delineated 0.03. Meaning the farmers can do anything they want with their hemp as long as they're not, making something for people to get high. So the way that we intended to write the bill was that, again, this is for consumables.
Right. So all this does is delineate that so everybody, including the farmers, know it because there's been so much murkiness in the water over the last 9 years. And so what you just said is exactly what we want to just
But I just think the farmers, if they're growing hemp and they're getting ready to send it to, I don't know, be made out for rope or something, I wouldn't see the purpose of them testing it. It's going to be made into rope. It's like there's...
you know what? If that's the wish of the committee, there's just been so much pushback over the years that's where we went. Now, if you're good with that and not doing it at all, just the idea was that if somebody tried to grow something at a higher rate, but you're okay with that,
if they grow it at a higher rate because for some reason the tensile strength is better and it just so happens to have more THC, but you're using it to make sandals, I don't believe that's the concern. Now, again, I'll look back through the bill 566 because I really believe that was targeting consumable products. I want these hemp farmers to be able to, whatever style of hemp for whatever clothing or materials they want to grow. I think that's fine. We only get into those murky waters. Or if they're going to argue we don't know where the hemp goes after we grow it. If that's the argument, that we don't send it to a textile mill, we just, whoever bids gets it, then maybe that's a discussion to have. I was just under the assumption that these individuals growing also had a destination for it. Am I wrong?
No, you're not wrong. The only thing that I would say, Mr. Chair, is that it has become very complicated over the last few years, and this is an attempt to try to clean it up in conjunction with the cannabis bill, in conjunction so that they're working together. I just don't want them to have
to test unnecessarily if they're just making industrial. That's all, and we'll look into it again.
Okay.
I know I put you up to putting these bills up, so I'm not trying to overly be combative here.
Right.
I just wanted, for some clarity, to understand, it was never our goal for our hemp farmers to have to test their THC before they send it out to make rope with it. I don't think that's anyone's goal.
That's just the way it has been.
Right,
which
but
is
just like
right.
it was never the goal for us to legalize hemp so people can use stuff over 0.3% to get high. When we did it all those years ago, that was never the goal.
That is exactly
what
right.
we thought was happening is just what these young men are doing. That's what we approve. So thank you very much. Apologize, I just want to make some points of clarity. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you. Chairman Wilson, members of the committee, my name is Ernie Beck. I reside in Cecil County with my wife and 4 children. I'm a volunteer first responder, and I've been in the hemp industry since its inception in 2019. With Maryland's 2 million acres under farm operation, local and regional ports, railroads, and highways that allow shipping to reach 2/3 of the U.S. population within 24 hours, we in Maryland have the potential to be the industry leader in the United States. I have interest from companies who want to bring their businesses to Maryland. In 2021, after experiencing firsthand the decline of the CBD industry due to unfavorable regulation and other factors, I began focusing on industrial hemp for grain and fiber. During 2 years of research and education, I have created contacts, working relationships, and opportunities not only with industrial hemp farmers across the United States, but businesses who have the potential to disrupt the current way of making products. Some of these hemp-derived products include car parts, compostable plastics, biofuels, and hempwood, as you see here. All of these originate from a plant that is farmed just as corn, beans, and other commodity crops that Maryland farmers have been growing for hundreds of years. In addition to the environmentally friendly product produced, one of the greatest potentials is carbon sequestration. One of the obstacles the industry faces is farmer buy-in. Under current regulations, a farmer is required to pay an application fee in excess of $500 for every numerical address they would plant, perform testing, and risk felony charges if they have a crop go hot. In 2021, it was projected that the industrial hemp industry for grain and fiber alone had the potential to reach $32 billion by 2030. The industry is positioned and ready to not only provide jobs, but healthy, non-toxic, and environmentally friendly products. We just need favorable regulations offered in House Bill 1067 to initiate the necessary changes that are currently holding us back. I appreciate the work that this committee is doing, and I'm able to answer any questions. Thank you.
Dear Honorable Chair, Vice Chair, and members of the committee, my name is Levi Sellers. I am the president of the Maryland Hemp Coalition, the hemp representative on the Maryland Ag Commission, and the owner-operator of my family's licensed hemp farm located in Washington County. HB 1067, as written, only supports a small portion of the hemp industry. Although hemp consumables are important to this industry, this bill, as written, does not address critical issues currently impacting the Maryland hemp industry or support the farmers producing raw hemp materials for these consumables, nor does it encourage individuals to explore industrial uses for hemp as a federally recognized agricultural commodity. We are therefore happy to support the sponsor's amendments which addresses these issues. From the end of 2020 growing season to the end of the 22 growing season, we have seen a decrease of Maryland licensed hemp producers by 54%, as well as a 97% decrease in planted acres of hemp and a 94% decrease in square foot of indoor greenhouse production. This decline, in part, is directly related to more restrictive state hemp regulations than other parts of the country. HB 1067, as written, does not address these issues. Currently, Maryland hemp farmers that mistakenly produce non-compliant, non-negligent hemp testing above 0.3% THC and below 1% are required to either destroy or remediate using methods the MDA, in collaboration with the University of Maryland, have studied and proved to be unsuccessful. This results in significant financial losses for Maryland hemp farmers. Hemp products can only be created if hemp farmers are able to produce viable raw materials. These proposed amendments provide opportunities for cost-effective alternative remediation methods, protecting farmers who work diligently to produce a federally compliant crop. These amendments also create additional licensing to encourage individuals to explore the true industrial purposes of hemp by creating a separate license for this sector of the hemp industry that has been disregarded. There is much more to be explored in this sector. For these reasons, I urge you support HB 1067 with amendments. Please review my written testimony for more detail, and thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. I do not see any other questions, so I believe that this panel can be excused and this bill hearing is over. And we have one last bill to be heard today, House Bill 1204. Do you have a panel, sir? Just you?
I think there's a couple people that want to come up, and that's fine.
Sure.
Mr. Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee, I'm here to introduce House Bill 1204. Again, not simple subject matter. This one is much more complicated than the previous bill. This has to do with consumables, again, a moving target. And the feds and the USDA have made this an even more confusing process because of their lack of leadership on the federal level has just led to a lot of non-definable pieces when it comes to consumables. So the intent of HB 1204 is a consumer protection bill. It's intended to strictly regulate hemp-derived consumable products, including Delta-8. It intends to ensure the consumable hemp products are grown and sold by licensed entities, and that consumers have all the information they need to make decisions about consumptions. 1204 seeks to enact licensing, packaging, labeling, recommendations listed, and the Maryland Medical Cannabis Commission legislative report on hemp-derived consumable products. This is really a consumer protection bill designed to define anything between 0.3 and 1%. Now, since then, as we're trying to figure this out, the Maryland Department of Agriculture has come up with an idea. The unfortunate part is that the idea is, it's all been happening so fast, and the idea is late. We don't have a lot of time, but they had an idea of creating a crafts license, like a crafts brewer's license. Unfortunately, they couldn't be here today to talk about their idea in a little bit more detail, but I do have a small white paper that they authored, and again, their idea was to create a farm-based crafts cannabis grower's license to coincide with a hemp grower's license, providing for a limited number of licenses that could be issued, allowing existing hemp growers to have an alternative to remediation when the concentration products of 0.3 to 1%, and the General Assembly can adjust those percentages if desired. And again, this is just an attempt to kind of deal with those that grow a little bit hot. There is some concern about transporting to remediate, and the Department of Ag still has those concerns. And again, it's not been very clear from the feds what can be done. There are some states that have mitigated this and have come up with options, Montana and Tennessee being some of them, but that doesn't necessarily mean the state of Maryland nor the Maryland Department of Agriculture is comfortable with those ideas. So I again beg the indulgence and the patience of the committee. This is very complicated subject matter. It's been a big piece to get me from industrial hemp to actual consumable, which I am not nearly as familiar with. So with that said, I am happy to pass it to some of the other folks on the panel and then answer any questions. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Honorable Chair, Vice Chair, and members of the committee. Again, my name is Levi Sellers, the President of the Maryland Hemp Coalition, the hemp representative on the Maryland Ag Commission, and owner-operator of my family's hemp farm in Washington County. I would like to first thank the sponsors of HB 1204, as this truly is a bill to address critical issues currently impacting the Maryland hemp industry. Hemp is a multifaceted agricultural crop that holds great potential for improving many critical aspects of the Maryland economy, and this bill provides opportunity to further explore the industrial and therapeutic potentials of hemp in order to achieve its full economic potentials. HB 1204 helps farmers produce a profitable crop and avoid significant financial loss by providing opportunities to alternative remediation methods, encourages individuals to explore the true industrial purposes of hemp by creating a separate license for this disregarded sector of the hemp industry, and seeks to enact the licensing, packaging, testing, labeling recommendations listed in the Maryland Medical Cannabis Commission's legislative report on hemp-derived non-Delta-9 THC products. Having taken part As the Maryland Hemp Coalition representative in the study group that assisted in developing this report, I believe the established regulatory structure in HB 1204 addresses the concerns about these products and increases consumer safety, supports small family-owned and minority-owned Maryland businesses while eliminating bad actors from the marketplace. Marylanders have a unique opportunity to lead the national hemp industry if this bill is enacted with the sponsors' amendments. For these reasons, I urge a favorable report of HB 1204. Please review my written testimony, and thank you again for your time and consideration. I'm open for questions as well.
Okay, seeing no questions. Oh, Delegate Valderrama.
For the bill sponsor, just really quick, just to clarify, because I see that you're requiring 5 licenses, and the last one, I'm not an expert in this, so I'm just learning as you go along. So the industrial license, they pretty much do what the producer does, what the processor does. So is it just to encompass, because they're doing it just for a crop for grain, or, I'm just trying to understand that one.
You know what, Delegate Valderrama? I'm trying to understand it too. And the reason I say that is because all of this is moving so fast and there are so many competing industries, it's hard to keep up with, like you heard the chair asking questions. My understanding is that in order for industrial hemp to be separated to do what the chair was saying, there are a bunch of laws on the books that we have to go and remove all of these licenses. In this particular bill, my understanding is we would be setting up a lot of licenses similarly to the cannabis work that we've been doing, but a separate licensing structure specifically for hemp that tests between 0.3 and 1% THC level. But I don't know, it's, the reason I keep saying this is a moving target, because I don't know or understand how this would fit in with the current cannabis bill or not. It is, and then the Maryland Department of Agriculture just came up with this idea as well about the special license, and unfortunately, they can't be here to testify because I don't think they have had enough time to think out what exactly that looks like. So it's a great question. I wish I had it. Maybe Levi
I could
has a
add
better
to that
answer
if that
for
would
you.
be helpful. So what the bill aims to do with the industrial hemp is the industrial hemp licenses do exactly what Delegate Fraser-Hidalgo was highlighting, to divide off the industrial aspects, whether it's the fiber for building materials, clothing materials, things along those lines, to provide the opportunity for some of the exemptions of the regulatory structure that's been set up for the cannabinoid side of hemp. What the MDA is proposing is more specific for the cannabinoid side of hemp, which could be favorable from the hemp industry to actually put a dividing line so that it's easier to understand for the public and the legislative body the difference between industrial purposes of hemp and cannabinoid side of hemp, which would be the consumable product side there. Does that kind of answer your question?
Delegate Valderrama, it's hence the two completely different bills.
That's correct.
That's why, I mean, at one point, the industry, and we were talking about 3 different bills, and then we narrowed it down to 2 different bills because it's so complicated. But just, it either is industrial hemp that you make ropes and shirts out of, or it's consumable hemp.
Yeah.
2 different bills.
No, I got that. I was just saying that industrial license and the producer and the process, they all do the same thing, except with the exception of saying grown as in agricultural crop. So I was just trying to segregate what exactly the difference was, except for that. But we can take it offline, so
Okay,
I thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yep. All right, seeing no further questions, we'll now go to the in-person unfavorables. I have Joe.
We have one more.
Oh, I'm sorry. My apologies. Go ahead, Mr. Patrick.
Thank you. Good to see you again, Vice Chair Crosby, Chair Wilson, and members of the committee. My name is Nicholas Patrick. I'm co-founder of the Maryland Healthy Alternatives Association, and I'm here to testify in favor of HB 1204 with the sponsor amendments. We in the hemp industry have been operating within the parameters of the law and have built very successful businesses around these products for the past several years, which have allowed many small and minority business owners from all walks of life to achieve success. Many of us invested every single dollar we have into our companies, and we have poured our entire lives into them. Our members have done their best with no regulatory oversight to test these products, create safe packaging and labeling standards, and age-gate these products. We do not want to see these products sold in an irresponsible manner, and we share the concerns of this body. We hear people say that some of these products should be outright banned instead of regulated because they have the potential to be intoxicating, while we as a state are literally creating a legal and regulated marketplace for intoxicants that are more than twice as potent as the products produced by the hemp industry. We just heard discussions in the previous bills about high potency, and we're about to criminalize something at 0.3% or below, or 1% or below, and even less than half of the potency of what the marijuana industry is about to do. All we've been asking for is for collaboration between the state and us since the inception of our industry, and we believe that the newly established Cannabis Regulation and Enforcement Division at the ATCC is the best body to oversee regulation of these products. Those of us that are here today working hard to protect our livelihoods, we're not politicians and we're not lobbyists. We're just a group of small business owners who are spending incredible amounts of time away from our businesses and our families to simply be able to convey the importance of our industry to this body. We are professionals who built real businesses that support real families of all colors and creeds, unlike the existing cannabis businesses who are being grandfathered into this incoming industry. All we ask is to be regulated and to stay in business, and HB 1204 is the vehicle to do so in accordance with the federal law. The heavy lifting has been done. The plan is right here in front of us. I'm urging this committee to hear us, to help us, to work with us to safely regulate these products, because many of us don't have backup plans. We're not some major corporations that can just go and continue doing business around the country if Maryland turns their backs on us. We are small businesses supporting local communities. And I'll be finished in 1 second.
Sir, I need you to wrap up.
Okay, we begged the FDA to regulate us. They said no. We begged the Department of Ag, and they kicked the bucket down the street. And now we're here to ask you.
Thank you, sir.
To regulate
Thank you.
us.
Okay, seeing no questions, that concludes this panel. Now we will go to the in-person unfavorable. It'll be Joe Bryce and Ashley Bagwell. And you can start when ready.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. My name is Joe Bryce. I represent the Maryland Wholesale Medical Cannabis Trade Association, the growers and processors of medical cannabis. So you have my written testimony. It goes through a lot of the history that the delegate mentioned on hemp and the non-intoxicating nature and how Congress has thrown this by inaction into the lap of the states. We did not oppose the other bill. We do not oppose anything to do with industrial hemp. What we seek to do, as this committee did yesterday, is limit the intoxicating products to be sold through the same regulated system that you established yesterday. 0.3%, that's fine in a plant. It's like this piece of paper versus my cell phone. 0.3% of this piece of paper is very little THC. When you put it against a bigger base, you get large numbers of THC. The same kind of THC that are found in regular cannabis-based intoxicating products. And that's the point here. They are correct. They have not broken the federal law, and there was no state law on this. So I'm not accusing anybody of being bad or doing bad things, but these are intoxicating products that are available around the state without the structure that you have put in place for cannabis. And that's our whole goal, is to differentiate, as Delegate Fraser-Hidalgo attempted, the industrial from consumable intoxicating products. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair. My name is Ashley Bagwell. I'm here this afternoon on behalf of the Maryland Medical Dispensary Association, respectfully in opposition to House Bill 1204. This position is consistent with testimony that we provided on House Bill 556, which y'all passed out of committee yesterday, and consistent with our position on House Bill 1078 as introduced last year. As was just stated, very simply put, our position is that all intoxicating products should be treated the same and regulated the same. We agree with all of the points Mr. Bryce made. I just want to speak directly to a couple of points in House Bill 1204. And I apologize, I've not seen the amendments offered on this bill. On page 9, and I'm speaking specifically to parts of the bill that address the retail locations or retail licenses. Really, the only substantive part that speaks to the retail licenses is on page 9, lines 12 through 18. And this essentially says that retail licensees must sign a declaration saying that they won't sell to individuals under the age of 21. There's nothing in here about product handling, nothing in here about inspections, no enforcement really articulated. On page 3, line 7, the term distribute is defined so as to include bartering. That is not included in the medical program and certainly not included in the adult use program as it's being considered. The last point I want to make, and this is just to illustrate what we're talking about, and again, we're talking about intoxicating products. These are products that I bought this week. This is a container of Delta 8 gummies. It's 2,500 milligrams. 24 pieces in this, which is a little over 100 milligrams per piece. Delta 9 products. This is 500 milligrams. There are 15 pieces in here, so that's about 33% per piece. Just for context, what's allowed in the medical program, edibles are capped at 10 milligrams. I'll finish up, Mr. Chairman. 10 milligrams per serving, 100 milligrams per package. A processor is allowed to submit a waiver to go above those limits, but they're capped at 40. Yes, sir, 40 milligrams. Again, we believe all intoxicating products should be treated the same. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Delegate Howard.
1078, the history on that bill. You want to brief the committee on the history of that bill?
Yes, sir. And that bill was a bill that was heard in the Health and Government Operations Committee last year. And I think the Senate.
Pulled from rules on sine die, passed the House, passed the Senate, made it back to the House, and died 15 minutes before, or would have been passed by the House had we had 15 more minutes on sine die. My next question is for Joe. Tennessee has looked at these THC levels, and they're at about 5%, correct?
I'm not sure what you mean.
As far as their testing, wet and dry, they're at like 5%. We're talking about 1%.
Again, the plant is not the issue. The end product that a person consumes is the issue. And the Delta 9 product, for example, that Ms. Bagwell has, Delta 9 is the same intoxicant as it is in a cannabis sativa plant intended for marijuana production. The only difference between the plants is hemp is limited to this much THC. Cannabis can be sold at a higher level. So you know what you do? You take 20 of these and you put them together and you put them in a product and you have an intoxicating product. Same thing, you convert Delta 8, which is not very prominent in the actual plant, but you have a chemical process to create more Delta 8, and then you sell these products. The problem is that Congress said the product can have 0.3% weight by value. And when you get into a product that is heavier than the stalk of a plant, that can be a lot of THC.
And other states, knowing this, have allowed for higher ranges.
Some of them have banned the sale of the product completely.
And some of them have raised that from 0.1 to 5%. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Thank you all. We have one virtual. Is that correct? Okay. That concludes this bill hearing and the bill hearings for today. Members, reminder, we have bill hearings on Monday starting at 1 p.m. Have a good weekend.